Thanks, Dr. Batra, for inviting and for a really thought-provoking address which you just gave. Uh, I'll spend about 20-25 minutes actually going through some of the sustainability work which we do and leave 5-7 minutes for questions. I put an alarm for myself and I've requested my colleagues just in case I cross that to let me know. A bit about Nestle in India. I'm sure many of you would be aware of the company, but just to mention that we are in India for over 110 years now. We are one of the fastest growing markets for Nestle globally. We are 8,000 of us who work for Nestle in India. We are a listed company and about 400,000 plus shareholders. 9 factories already, 10 factories going to come in Orissa, 9 factory came in Sanad, which we call Navratan factory. We have 10,000 distributors. Our products are available at 5.2 million outlets. And through our social work, the CSR work and the SV work which we do, we reach about 10 million beneficiaries. I hope my sound is able to reach till the last. Thank you. Again, I think what Dr. Batra mentioned about heat, every day in the morning, one of the first things many of us actually do is to look at the weather report for the day. And once the weather report is seen, it's 44 degrees, 45 degrees or whatever, and we say another day. Some of the things, and I don't want to repeat it because you've already been seeing, the message really is that, few years back, there was discussion whether there is going to be climate change impact or not. I think today we see it. There was one day in particular when we saw floods in part of India. We also saw heat waves in parts of India, and there was a cyclone. That is the reality, and whatever work we do as companies or individual contributing towards reduction of emission is actually going to go a long way. I will use Nestle's example just to make a point, but many of us are already in this journey and doing great work here. What really happens when the heat waves come in or floods come in or cyclones come in? I find this very interesting when it says the precipitation, extreme precipitation will mean that the sea levels will go up. And now there are reports which say some countries could get partially merged. I think it's a very, very serious situation. It also impacts really the life at the oceans. Heat waves, again, productivity of agri-produce comes down. 2 years back, we had 27 heat wave days. Number of heat wave days are going up year after year. And severe drought, don't need to mention to anyone that when there is a drought, of course, the productivity of the agri comes down. Being sustainable is an expectation as the bare minimum expectation from the corporations now. Gone are those days when it was sort of a PR word that I am environmentally sustainable. For many, many years, this is the expectation which we all have. If you are part of an organization, you definitely ask a question, am I working for a sustainable company with a purpose? What is the purpose this organization brings to the fore? These suppliers more and more want to grow with companies which helps them grow further. And many of them, and we work with them very closely, are looking at those corporations which help them in sustainable practices, and I'll talk about it a bit later. Investors are not only looking at the financial parameters, but they're also looking at non-financial parameters. What is the contribution towards water, energy? You've all seen the reports which are coming in. Consumers are looking at honest, transparent, value-driven companies. I'm sure when you pick up a product now, you also see which company this product comes from and what sort of practices that company has. And industry, we are all gearing up towards this. More and more work is being done. And I have a feeling it's going to be absolutely essential that this becomes part of business strategies, and more and more work will be seen to be done here. For Nestle, really this is part of our business strategy and the thinking which we have. I've just reproduced an extract from Nestle narrative, and I'll just read it out for you. What is good today will not be good enough tomorrow. Consider the challenge of satisfying the nutritional needs of 10 billion people by 2050 in a responsible and sustainable way. This will demand significant, even radical changes. So we have made some very ambitious commitment. Will be net zero by 2050, will reduce our emission by 50% by 2030, 20% by 2025. Any work of this magnitude, you need huge focus on that. So when we started our journey towards sustainability, we started by creating a governance council around it. Our chairman and managing director actually heads this governance council. We looked at 5 key areas or 5 key initiatives which we want to take as a company, and each of the task force which you see here is sponsored by a management committee member. Then there are specialists who work in that. As we speak, about 90 of my colleagues are either working on sustainability or they are double-hatting sustainability. I'll quickly take a minute to explain what these task forces are and what they are doing. Very important is the responsible sourcing task force, which is the first task force here, really looking at in our value chain which are the interventions from a sustainability perspective we can do, keeping also at the same time in mind that the livelihood increases. 2/3 of us live in villages, many of us, the livelihood depends on agriculture. How can you marry both sustainability and livelihood is what this task force looks at. Again, very important, sustainable packaging. Plastic packaging, as you know, you go to any place, you see it littered. I think for corporations, it's very, very important that we reduce the plastic usage. And when plastic is used, the post-consumer plastic waste is managed responsibly. This task force looks at that. Manufacturing, energy, water, there is a task force, logistics, a task force which looks at that and keeps its focus there. There is a task force which looks at what brands can do. And you will see some examples here. And lastly, we are from a advocacy perspective, there are a lot of policies which are evolving. There are a lot of good work which is being done on this, but much more will be done in coming years. This team will make sure that there is a balanced approach, at least our position goes out and we talk about it. One of the areas is going out and speaking about some of the initiatives which we have. Hopefully that will become inspiration for some, a good example for some. Let me start with dairy. We buy huge quantities of fresh milk. We buy roughly 1 million liters of milk every day. We buy it from 80,000 farmers. So you can imagine the herd size is small, which also means that the work which we are doing is helping the community. It's also helping reduction of emission. At the same time, it should also help productivity. The work which we started in 1961. We buy from Punjab, Haryana, Rajasthan. We are engaging with 80,000 farmers, as I said. I will show you a video as to how productivity, renewable energy, and sustainability all comes together. We are putting in biodigesters. I'm sure many of you know about biodigesters, but many of you may not be aware that there can be small biodigesters which can be put in a farm which has only 3 to 5 cows. When we think biodigester, we think very big biodigester. So we have put about 3,000 of those. We are also working on feed which actually reduces GHG emission and at the same time increases productivity. Something which the community is really looking for. And we are planting trees. Again, 2 purposes get served. Plants and trees, they are good sources of sequestering carbon, and after a point in time, they also become an opportunity for livelihood for the farmer. If you have a mango tree, you can always take those mangoes, either use it at home or you sell it. I'll quickly show you one video of how a biodigester comes in and then explain as to why we think it's a very good idea.
ਪੰਜਾਬ ਦੇ ਪਿੰਡਾਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਵਧੇਰੇ ਘਰਾਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਅੱਜ ਵੀ ਰੋਟੀ ਰਸੋਈ ਗੈਸ ਦੀ ਬਜਾਏ ਚੁੱਲ੍ਹੇ ਤੇ ਪੱਕਦੀ ਏ। ਸਲਾਬੀ ਪਾਥੀਆਂ, ਗਿੱਲੀ ਲੱਕੜਾਂ ਤੇ ਰਸੋਈ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੰਮ ਕਰਨ ਵੇਲੇ ਸਾਰੇ ਘਰ ਵਿੱਚ ਧੂਆਂ, ਐਦਾਂ ਦੇ ਦ੍ਰਿਸ਼ ਬੜੇ ਆਮ ਨੇ। ਕੁਝ ਪ੍ਰਗਤੀਸ਼ੀਲ ਕਿਸਾਨ ਨਵੀਂ ਤਕਨੀਕ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਕਿ ਬਾਇਓਡਾਈਜੈਸਟਰ ਨੂੰ ਅਪਣਾ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ, ਜਿਸ ਦੇ ਸਿੱਟੇ ਵਜੋਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਜ਼ਿੰਦਗੀ ਸੌਖੀ ਹੋ ਰਹੀ ਏ।
ਮੇਰਾ ਨਾਮ ਮਨਦੀਪ ਕੌਰ ਹੈ। ਅਸੀਂ ਜਲਾਲਾਬਾਦ ਦੇ ਰਹਿਣ ਵਾਲੇ ਹਾਂ। ਸਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ 6 ਗਾਵਾਂ ਤੇ 1 ਮੱਝ ਹੈ।
ਮੇਰਾ ਨਾਮ ਬਲਦੇਵ ਸਿੰਘ ਹੈ। ਪਿੰਡ ਮੇਰਾ ਜਲਾਲਾਬਾਦ ਹੈ। ਸਾਡੇ ਪਿੰਡ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪਹਿਲੇ ਕਿਸਾਨ ਹੈ ਅਸੀਂ, ਜਿਹੜਾ ਗੋਬਰ ਗੈਸ ਅਸੀਂ ਸਭ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਲਵਾਇਆ ਹੈ। ਇਹ ਗੋਬਰ ਗੈਸ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਇੱਕ ਵਾਰੀ ਲੱਗ ਗਿਆ 10 ਸਾਲ ਤਾਈਂ ਕੋਈ ਇਹਦਾ ਫਿਕਰ ਨਹੀਂ ਗਾ।
ਮੈਨੂੰ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਡੇਅਰੀ ਫਾਰਮ ਦੀਆਂ ਜ਼ਰੂਰਤਾਂ ਵੱਧ ਤੋਂ ਵੱਧ ਘਰੇ ਹੀ ਪੂਰੀਆਂ ਹੋ ਜਾਣ ਤਾਂ ਬਹੁਤ ਵਧੀਆ ਹੈ। ਸਾਡੀ ਰਸੋਈ ਗੈਸ ਆਪਣੇ ਹੀ ਫਾਰਮ ਤੇ ਬਣਦੀ ਹੈ। ਬਾਇਓਗੈਸ ਨਾਲ ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਧੂੰਆਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੁੰਦਾ, ਜੋ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਟੱਬਰ ਦੀ ਰੋਟੀ ਬਣਾਉਣ ਵੇਲੇ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਅੱਖਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਸੀ, ਇਹ ਸਿਹਤ ਲਈ ਚੰਗਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੁੰਦਾ। ਸਾਡਾ ਗੈਸ ਦਾ ਖਰਚਾ ਤਾਂ ਬਿਲਕੁਲ ਖਤਮ ਹੀ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ ਤੇ ਨਾ ਹੀ ਹੁਣ ਚੁੱਲ੍ਹੇ ਲਈ ਲੱਕੜਾਂ ਲੈਣ ਜਾਣਾ ਪੈਂਦਾ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਨਾ ਹੀ LPG ਗੈਸ ਬੁੱਕ ਕਰਵਾਉਣਾ ਪੈਂਦਾ।
ਨੈਸਲੇ ਨੇ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਗੋਬਰ ਗੈਸ ਦੀ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਦਿੱਤੀ।
ਗੋਬਰ ਗੈਸ ਪਲਾਂਟ ਲਵਾਉਣ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਮਿੱਥੀ ਹੋਈ ਥਾਂ ਉੱਤੇ ਦੱਸੀਆਂ ਗਈਆਂ ਹਦਾਇਤਾਂ ਅਨੁਸਾਰ ਟੋਆ ਪੱਟਣਾ ਪੈਂਦਾ। ਸਾਡੇ ਘਰ ਵਿੱਚ ਲਗਭਗ 2 ਦਿਨਾਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਗੋਬਰ ਗੈਸ ਪਲਾਂਟ ਲੱਗ ਗਿਆ ਸੀ ਤੇ ਇਸ ਨੂੰ ਚਲਾਉਣਾ ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਔਖਾ ਕੰਮ ਨਹੀਂ। ਇਸ ਦੇ ਲਈ ਲਗਭਗ 50 ਕਿਲੋ ਗੋਬਰ ਰੋਜ਼ਾਨਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਹੈ। ਜੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ 3 ਜਾਂ 4 ਮੱਝਾਂ ਗਾਵਾਂ ਹਨ ਤਾਂ ਇਹ ਆਸਾਨੀ ਨਾਲ ਇਕੱਠਾ ਹੋ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਹੈ। ਇੱਕ ਛੋਟਾ ਗੋਬਰ ਗੈਸ ਪਲਾਂਟ 5-7 ਜਣਿਆਂ ਦੇ ਟੱਬਰ ਲਈ ਗੈਸ ਬਣਾ ਸਕਦਾ ਹੈ, ਜੋ ਪੂਰਾ 1 ਮਹੀਨਾ ਚੱਲਦੀ ਹੈ। ਸਾਨੂੰ ਇਸ ਵਿੱਚ 3-4 ਹਫ਼ਤਿਆਂ ਲਈ ਪਸ਼ੂਆਂ ਦਾ ਗੋਬਰ ਪਾਉਣਾ ਪੈਂਦਾ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਸਭ ਦੀ ਸੁਰੱਖਿਆ ਲਈ ਇਸ ਦੇ 4 ਪਾਸੇ ਕੰਡਿਆਲੀ ਤਾਰ ਲਾਉਣੀ ਪੈਂਦੀ ਹੈ। ਮੈਂ ਬਹੁਤ ਖੁਸ਼ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਸਾਡੇ ਘਰੇ ਗੋਬਰ ਗੈਸ ਪਲਾਂਟ ਲੱਗਿਆ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਜੋ ਕਿ ਸਾਡੇ ਪਰਿਵਾਰ ਲਈ ਬਹੁਤ ਲਾਹੇਵੰਦ ਹੈ। ਬਿਨਾਂ ਧੂਏ ਵਾਲੀ ਰਸੋਈ ਤੇ ਆਮਦਨ ਵਿੱਚ ਵਾਧਾ ਹੋਇਆ ਹੈ।
ਇਹ ਗੈਸ ਬਣਨ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਸਲੈਰੀ ਨਿਕਲਦੀ ਆ, ਇਹਦਾ ਅਸੀਂ ਇੱਥੇ ਸਬਜ਼ੀ ਨੂੰ ਵਰਤੋਂ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਤੇ ਅੱਛਾ ਇਹਦਾ ਰਿਜ਼ਲਟ ਆਉਂਦਾ। ਖਾਦ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਪਾਉਣ ਦੀ ਲੋੜ ਨਹੀਂ ਪੈਂਦੀ ਇਹਦੇ 'ਚ ਤੇ ਵਧੀਆ ਸਾਡੀ ਸਬਜ਼ੀ ਬਣਦੀ, ਬਹੁਤ ਅੱਛੀ ਬਣਦੀ ਹੈ। ਤੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਜੀ ਪੁਰਾਣੇ ਨੈਸਲੇ ਡੈਰੀ ਨਾਲ ਜੁੜੇ ਹਾਂ, 10 ਸਾਲ ਹੋ ਚੱਲੇ ਆ 10 ਤੇ ਉਤੋਂ ਵੀ ਵਧੀਆ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਉਹਦਾ ਰਿਜ਼ਲਟ ਆਉਂਦਾ। ਵਧੀਆ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਜੇ ਕੋਈ ਪਸ਼ੂ ਢਿੱਲਾ ਵਸਾ ਹੁੰਦਾ, ਡੈਰੀ ਦੀ ਟੀਮ ਆਉਂਦੀ ਆ ਸਾਡੇ ਘਰੇ ਤੇ ਆ ਕੇ ਆਪਦਾ ਸਾਡਾ ਭਾਗ ਦਾ ਕਰਦੀ ਆ, ਪਸ਼ੂਆਂ ਦਾ ਵਧੀਆ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ ਤੇ ਅੱਜ ਤਾਈਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਕੋਈ ਲਾਂਭਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਆਇਆ। ਅੱਜ ਤਾਈਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਕੋਈ ਗੱਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋਈ।
ਮੈਂ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੀ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਵੱਧ ਤੋਂ ਵੱਧ ਕਿਸਾਨ ਇਸ ਨਾਲ ਜੁੜਨ ਤੇ ਇਸ ਦਾ ਲਾਭ ਚੁੱਕਣ।
As you saw, this one biodigester, it actually reduces the expense for 1.5 equivalent of LPG cylinder. It also gives organic fertilizer, which is very useful. And you saw the happiness on the lady's face that she doesn't have to use wood for cooking medium. She is getting clean energy. We have already put in about 3,500 of these on all parameter. I think it's a very good sustainability idea. If you come across anyone who wants to put it, we can actually get you connected with the suppliers. I think it's a very good sustainability initiative. The other area we are working very closely on, while we are looking at opportunities on how to convert our factories as coal-free factories by 2024, we are looking at various areas like biomass boiler, where energy could be generated and used by the factory. You will be very happy to know that the briquettes which we are going to use in our Moga factory, which is in Punjab, will be made out of stubble. And you know, stubble every year is an issue. In winters, some contribution for the pollution is also attributed to those. 4% of the total stubble which gets generated will be used by us. We are also looking at how to make sure that the efficiency in energy is there. And you see here, in last 15 years, we have reduced some 36% of the energy usage in our factory. Logistics, more and more looking at if we can have better loads, we can have EVs which are coming in using more CNG and so on and so forth, encouraging our own employees also to move towards EV. We buy a lot of spices and we are working with spice farmers, about 1250 of them, to go through the sustainable practices with 3 key areas in mind. Whatever practices are being adopted, are they sustainable at the farm level? Are the people who are working in these farms, are we able to provide them facilities where it's safe working conditions? And lastly, and very importantly, how can we increase the livelihood for those? 10 of the key spices which we buy are traceable to the farm level now. Again, I'm sure you all know Nescafe. We buy coffee bean from 5,000 farmers. Started working with them since 2012. Again, looking at practices. Indian coffee farms are amongst the best in the world when it comes to biodiversity. And through these practices, we are encouraging more and more of those. A lot of training provided by agronomists. And very importantly, if you are requesting farmers to adopt sustainable practices, you also have to see that their income goes up. So every farmer who applies what we call 4C compliance certifications get 4 rupees or thereabouts per kilo of coffee bean, which means that they stay with all these sustainable practices because they know end of the day their hard work is going to get them some extra money.
ನಾನು 25 ವರ್ಷದಿಂದ ಕಾಫಿ ಬೆಳೆಗಾರ. ನಾನು ಸೆಕೆಂಡ್ ಜನರೇಷನ್. ನಾನು 2012ರಿಂದ ನೆಸ್ಕೆಫೆ ಪ್ಲ್ಯಾನಿಗೆ ಭಾಗಿಯಾಗಿದ್ದೀನಿ. ಟ್ರೈನಿಂಗ್ ಕುಶನಗರ ಡೆಮೋ ಫಾರ್ಮಲ್ಲಿ ಟ್ರೈನಿಂಗ್ ಮಾಡಿದರು. ನಮಗೆ ಏನಾದರೂ ಸಲಹೆ ಬೇಕಿದ್ದರೆ ಅವರು ಬಂದು ನಮ್ಮ ತೋಟದಲ್ಲಿ ಸಲಹೆ ಕೊಡ್ತಾಯಿದ್ರು. 4C ಸರ್ಟಿಫಿಕೇಟಿಗೆ ಭಾಗಿಯಾಗಿದ್ದೀನಿ.
ನೆಸ್ಲೆ ಆಫೀಸರು ನನ್ನ ಮಗನಿಗೆ ಸಲಹೆ ನೀಡಿದ್ದರಿಂದ ನನಗೆ ಸಂತೋಷ.
ನೆಸ್ಕಾಫೆ ಪ್ಲ್ಯಾನ್ ಜೊತೆ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡಲು ಶುರುವಾದ ಮೇಲೆ ಕಾಫಿ ಕೃಷಿ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಹೆಚ್ಚು ತಿಳಿದುಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಇದರಿಂದ ನಮಗೆ ಸಹ ಉತ್ತಮ ಸಲಹೆಯನ್ನು ನೀಡುತ್ತಿದ್ದಾರೆ.
ನಮ್ಮ ಸುತ್ತಮುತ್ತಲಿನ ಶಾಲೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ನೆಸ್ಲೆಯವರು ಮಕ್ಕಳಿಗೆ ಕುಡಿಯುವ ನೀರಿನ ವ್ಯವಸ್ಥೆ ಹಾಗೂ ಹೆಣ್ಣು ಮಕ್ಕಳಿಗೆ ಶೌಚಾಲಯ ವ್ಯವಸ್ಥೆಯನ್ನು ಮಾಡಿರುವುದರಿಂದ ಮಕ್ಕಳಿಗೆ ಉತ್ತಮವಾಗಿದೆ. ಹಾಗೂ ನೆಸ್ಲೆಯಿಂದ ಬರುವ ಹೆಚ್ಚಿನ ಆದಾಯದಿಂದಾಗಿ ನಮ್ಮ ಮಕ್ಕಳ ಶಿಕ್ಷಣ ಹಾಗೂ ನಮ್ಮ ಜೀವನ ಶೈಲಿ ಉತ್ತಮವಾಗಿದೆ.
ನೆಸ್ಕೆಫೆ ಪ್ಲ್ಯಾನಿಂದ ಉತ್ತಮವಾಗಿ ಮಣ್ಣು ಪರೀಕ್ಷೆ, ವೇಸ್ಟ್ ಮ್ಯಾನೇಜ್ಮೆಂಟ್, ಉತ್ತಮವಾಗಿ ವ್ಯವಸಾಯ ಪದ್ಧತಿ ಕಲ್ತಿದ್ದೇನೆ. ನೆಸ್ಲೆ ಮೆಡಿಕಲ್ ಕ್ಯಾಂಪಿನಿಂದ ನಮ್ಮ ಸುತ್ತಮುತ್ತ ಜನರಿಗೆ ಒಳ್ಳೆಯ ಅನುಕೂಲವಾಗಿದೆ. ನಾನು ಸಾಯಿಲ್ ಟೆಸ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರಿಂದ ಗೊಬ್ಬರ ಕರೆಕ್ಟಾಗಿ ಹಾಕ್ತಾಯಿದ್ದೀನಿ. ಕಾಫಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಈಲ್ಡು ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಉಂಟು. ನೆಸ್ಕೆಫೆ ಉತ್ತಮ ವ್ಯವಸಾಯ ಪದ್ಧತಿಯಿಂದ ನನ್ನ ಕಾಫಿಯ ಕ್ವಾಲಿಟಿಯು ಇಂಪ್ರೂವ್ ಆಗಿದೆ. ನನಗೆ ಒಳ್ಳೆ ರೇಟು ಸಿಗುತ್ತೆ, ಒಳ್ಳೆ ಪ್ರೀಮಿಯಮು ಸಿಗುತ್ತೆ.
That brings me to the third key area, which is packaging. What you see here is the brands looking at opportunities where the plastic can be reduced. So all the ready to drink Tetra packs which you see of Milo or Nescafe, we don't have any plastic straws, they're all paper straws. Moving to easy to recycle. So the packaging can be difficult to recycle, which we call multi-layered packaging, or it could be monomaterial, which is easy to recycle. The brands are moving towards easy to recycle packaging. Also, to encourage and become an example for others to move into this direction, we use some of these plastic packaging which we take back to make benches, desks, so that these could be put in universities, and it could be some inspiration that we should be littering and we should be segregating the plastic waste. And one of the projects which we are doing in 7 touristic places is end to end how to make sure that the plastic remains segregated, how to create more awareness. It's all done through a very digital way. All households segregate, and where they don't, the teams go back and train them, and from there it goes till the end actually at the dry port level where it gets segregated and responsibly managed. We all know that once dry and wet plastic gets mixed, it's very, very difficult to then manage. I'm sure some of you may have seen this product. The Maggi cup noodles now has edible fork. I think it's a big move in the direction of non-usage of single-use plastic. Also, this is an example of some of the things which we are doing. If we were to innovate differently, there are solutions available. And last one, again very important for food processing industry, is water. We're looking at 347 million children below 18 who are exposed to high or extremely high water stress. 63% of India's districts are in water stress zones today. We all know 200 million of us don't have access to safe drinking or clean drinking water. What are we doing? One is we are working with farming communities to see how water consumption can be reduced, but we are also working in our factories to reduce water usage year by year. All of you would be aware that milk contains over 80% water. We try and extract this water and use it for utilities. The benefit is whatever milk you use there actually puts lesser pressure on ground extraction. In last 15 years, we have reduced water usage per ton of the product which we manufacture by over 50%, and similarly wastewater generation. Really, in last couple of minutes, some of the takeaways which we believe in and we are working on, I think there should be very clear priorities and clear initiative, because there are hundreds of things you can do. But if you were to focus and look at the big ticket item, I think the journey would start from there. Create a model, create a governance model which actually supports what you want to do. Move from do no harm to positive impact. Biodiversity, earlier the thinking was that if I use less of water, less of other things, actually I'm doing lesser harm. Now how can you make water positivity in the farms? How can you look at creating renewable energy sources? You saw example of biodiversity. It's not really do no harm, it's really positive impact for the communities. Find innovative approaches. Again, the key theme for us is whenever we are looking at an initiative, am I improving the livelihood for the community we work with? And regular monitoring and measurement, because some of these are very long drawn projects. 2050 net zero is still far, 2030 50% reduction is still far. How do you make sure that you measure it at regular intervals? And this brings me to my last slide. This is something which we keep in our offices, keep talking to our stakeholders, in our families. How do we reduce food loss and waste? How do we reduce water usage as individuals? How do we reduce plastic in our individual capacities? It's very easy to say that someone else should do it. Are we doing it? Are we segregating plastic well? And lastly, are we planting enough trees?